Good day, everyone. I'm Monica P. Gilbana, and allow me to discuss our topic about physical and motor characteristics during each stage of development. So, in this picture, what can you say? Well, as what you can see in the picture, it illustrates the changes and development of our body proportion as the time we grow. It illustrates the changes in our body according to months and years from fetus to adolescence. Well, as a biological beings, young children grow at a rapid rate. Also, physical development may seem obvious. However, children cannot attend classroom tasks unless their physical needs are met first. Meeting the needs of one part of the body, the brain, is especially important because it regulates learning, behavior, and other physical functions. Well, we cannot attend school unless our age, body structure, and especially the brain, since we use the brain to acquire knowledge, learnings, to function. Now, let's move on to physical development. Physical development is a process associated with the increase in structure and size marked by the steady increase in height, weight, muscle mass, while motor development is a progressive change in movement behavior throughout the life cycle. So, physical development, this means the changes in our body size, proportions, and can be seen in height, weight, and muscle mass. Physical development is tangible. It means makita, mahikap. It can be seen and touched. While motor development is the physical growth and strengthening of child bones, muscle, and ability to move and touch his or her surroundings. Now so in this picture, it means the lifespan changes in our body proportions as we grow. Developmental moments. Those windows of time when parents or caregivers can see the ways in which a young child is growing and developing new skills and abilities. This is the process and time when parents or caregivers can see the progress of the child and developing new skills. This is the best moments of every mother. They are happy when their children first say the word mama or papa. Some parents records every moment so that they can watch it when their child will grow. Now let's move on to the pattern of physical development. First, normative development. The typical abilities of children of a given age within a cultural group. It indicates typical range of what children can and cannot be expected to do and learn at given time. It enables parents and teachers to understand what to expect of a child physically at different ages. So, normative development, this is the stages of development that the majority of children of that specific age are expected to achieve. For example, when the child A is already know how to speak clearly at the age of 2, while child B is still know how to speak mama or papa well, it means there is no changes at all. Number 2, dynamic development. The sequence and changes that occur in all aspects of a functioning with the passage of time. When we say dynamic, it means continuous and productive activity or change. Just like how a toddler plays for an hour and suddenly it cries, maybe because he or she wants to sleep or to drink milk. And the dynamic development has two types: cephalocodal trend and proximodistal trend. Cephalocodal trend is evident after birth when the neonate's head is bigger than its body. This continues few months after birth when infants are able to use their upper limbs first before lower limbs. So, this cephalocodal trend, this is when the baby's head, neonate's head means baby's head, is bigger than her body. After a few months when it was born, it usually able to use the upper limbs than lower limbs. The baby can talk early than to walk, while the proximodistal trend is evident before birth when the fetus body parts grow from the inside and move outwards. After birth, this can be observed when the children learns how to turn its body, which adds indication that the trunk has attained maturation and is followed by the maturation of muscular control of the hands and fingers. This is when the baby can talk early at the age range of 2 than to walk. Now let's move on to the this is an example of Codal Direction and proximodistal direction. The process of Codal Direction from head down to tail. This means that improvement in structure and function comes first in the head region, then in the trunk, and last in the leg region. While the proximodistal direction, the process in proximodistal from center or middle to periphery direction, development proceeds from near to far outwards from central axis of the body towards the extremities. Now, let's move on to the basic principles of physical development. First, direction in growth. The appropriate pattern of physical development. It means the significant pattern. A. Large to small development. Muscles develop in the trunk, arms and legs before the muscles in the fingers, hands, and wrist. B. Top to bottom muscle development. Muscles develop from head to toe. C. Inside to outside. Muscles develop from the center of the body, then towards the outside of the body. And number 2, general to specific growth. Muscle growth begins with more general abilities and becomes more specific and defined as children grow older. This means that the muscle growth will be evident as the children grow older and also their capabilities. Number 3, differentiation and integration in growth. Once the child body's parts have differentiated, he can integrate his movements and combine specific movements to perform more complex physical tasks. This is the time where the child can move his or her body parts to finish the task in one go. Number 4, the variations in growth. Children differ in their physical abilities at different ages. This means that children differ in abilities at different ages. Optimal tendency in growth. Number 5. Growth in children generally tries to fulfill its potential. If growth is slowed of a particular reason, the body tries to catch up when it is able to do so. Number 6, sequence in growth. Physical development is orderly and occurs in patterns. So, the growth of a child is will change into pattern. The changes is based on pattern. Number 7, critical period in growth. Growth in certain areas of a child's physical development may be more important at particular times during their childhood. The critical time for the development of motor skills is between 18 to 60 months of age. And now let's move on to the physical growth cycles. Number 1, the first period of rapid physical growth or growth spurt goes from conception to 6 months old. Number 2, the rate of growth gradually slows during toddler and preschool period. So it means the percentage of growth of a child will gradually slows or stop during their toddler and preschool period. 3. The second period of rapid growth is during puberty of pre-adolescence and adolescence. 4. The period of leveling off occurs after puberty until adult is achieved. The number 5, that's all. And now let's move on to the types of physical movement. First, we have the locomotor movement. Movement of the body from place to place such as crawling, walking, hopping, jumping, running, leaping, and skipping. And this is the movement of the body where we move from place to place, one place to another. Then number 2, non-locomotor. Movement in the body while staying in one place such as pushing, pulling, turning, wiggling, sitting, and rising. So this movement is, there's no need to go to move from one place to another since you're just staying in one place. Then number 3, manipulative movement. Movement that involves controlled use of hands and feet such as grasping, opening, and closing hands, waving, throwing, and catching. So manipulative means you can manipulate your movement. And now let's move on to the area of motor development. First, the gross development. The child's general ability to move around the house, use the various parts of the body. Activities like rolling over, crawling, walking, running, and jumping are gross motor skills. These skills usually involve using the entire body of several parts of the body at one time. So it means your whole body is moving and it needs coordination. This is evident when the child is at the age of 5, 4, or 3. And number 2, fine motor development. The child's ability to use his hands properly. The skills drawing, playing, puzzle, and building towers are closely associated with the motor skills. These skills require smaller movement and more integrate capabilities. So, fine motor development, these skills only require smaller movement because this is depends on the capabilities of a child. It is the upper part of the body, which is the brain. Now let's move on to the brain development. Number 1, neural development. Neurons are the basic units of the brain and the entire nervous system that receive and transmit electrical and chemical impulses across many trillions of synapses. Some 100 to 200 billion of neurons are already formed by the end of the second semester of pregnancy, before the brain growth spurt begins. The first stage of neural development is known as neuralization, in which the neural tube develops. This is usually completed by 3 to 4 weeks of gestation. It is followed by proliferation or neurogenesis, where several 100,000 neurons are generated or formed each minute. And number 2, cell differentiation and synaptogenesis. Neurons that are formed at the neural tube of the developing embryo will later migrate along pathways laid down by the network of guiding cells to form major parts of the brain. The process is known as migration. The process of synaptogenesis, that is the formation of synaptic connections among neurons, is proceeding rapidly during the brain growth part. This brings about interesting facts about developing nervous system. Letter A. An average infant has far more neurons and neural connections than adults do. About half of the neurons produced early in life will also die early in life. Surviving neurons from hundreds of synapses, and many of them will disappear if the neuron is not properly stimulated in the process called synaptic pruning. Number 3. Roles of experience. Neurons that are properly stimulated will then degenerate, are dramatic illustrations of the use it or lose it principle. Therefore, exposing the individual to enriched environments that can provide variety of stimulation can foster neural development of an immature plastic brain. Number 4. Brain development and growth. Not all parts of the brain develop at the same rate. At birth, the most highly developed brain areas are the lower brain centers or the subcortical region. It controls states of consciousness, inborn reflexes, and vital biological functions such as digestion, respiration, and elimination. Number 5. Millenization. As brain cells proliferate and grow, some glial cells begin to produce a waxy substance called myelin, which forms a sheet around individuals' neurons. This sheet acts as insulator that speeds the transmission of impulses to the various parts of the body. Millenization, the process in which the axon enclosed by myelin sheets follow a definite chronological sequence that parallels the maturation of the nervous system. Number 6. Celebratorization. The cerebrum is the highest brain center. It is divided into two halves or hemispheres, connected by a band of fibers called corpus callosum. A cerebral cortex, an outer layer of gray matter that controls sensory and motor processes, perception, and intellectual functioning, covers each of the hemispheres. So we know that the brain is divided into three parts, which is cerebrum, cerebellum, and the brainstem. And the cerebrum is divided into two halves or hemispheres. So they are similar in appearance, but they serve different functions and controls different areas of the body. The left hemisphere controls the right side of the body and contains centers for speech, hearing, verbal, memory, reasoning, computing, decision-making, language processing, and expression of positive emotions. So the left hemisphere controls the right side of our body that contains the intangible skills such as speech, hearing, verbal, memory, and other. And the right cerebral hemisphere controls the left side of the body and contains centers for processing visual spatial information, non-linguistic such as music, artistry, tactile sensations, and expressing negative emotions. Number 5. Brain development of adolescents. Millenization of the higher brain centers continues at adolescents, increasing their attention spans and allowing them to process information more quickly. The brain retains some of its plasticity well beyond puberty, explaining their capability to respond to the effects of their experiences. Reorganizations of the neural circuitry of the prefrontal cortex, which is involved in higher level cognitive activities as strategic planning, continues until at least age of 20. 4. Cognitive advances that teenagers display become possible only after brains undergo a process of reorganization and fine-tuning. And that's all my report. Thank you.
Physical development of infants and toddlers. So before we begin our discussion, let's start first with what is an infant or a toddler? How they differ? So infant is a newborn baby under a year old, basically from 0 to 12 months, whereas toddler, a young child over a year of age, basically 12 to 36 months or 1 to 2 years of age. So to put it simply, the main difference of an infant and toddlers is the period when we call them. So moving on is the physical development of the two, namely the infant and the toddlers. Starting with an infant or the newborn baby, the first thing to learn is lifting their head and shoulders, then proceed gradually to rolling over, to creeping on their stomach, then the crawling. They began to climb and support their weight by standing, and because of that, they're able to develop the ability to walk. And the fine motor skills are eye-hand coordination and the ability to grasp an object. Meanwhile, a toddler has the ability to run, climb stairs, kick and throw balls, although they will have difficulty in catching balls. And the fine motor skills became more sophisticated as they scribble with crayons, turn book pages, tag blacks, and the dominance is either the right or left hand. Then, let's talk about the infant reflexes, or also known as baby reflexes or newborn reflexes. They are the baby's muscle reaction, involuntary movements of neurological responses to stimulation or triggers which may include sound, light, sudden movement, and being shocked or touched. So the first infant reflexes we're going to tackle is what we call as the sucking reflex. This type of reflex is involuntary movements. Is initiated when something touches the mouth of the child, is strong in infants, and is needed to suck a pacifier or of the mother's nipple. As you can see in the picture, the baby began to suck, which is very helpful, especially on breast or bottle feeding. Second is what we call as the rooting reflex. So in this reflex, infant turns its head to the direction where the cheek is stroked. And this reflex lasts about 4 months. And then, moving on, the third one is what we call gripping or palmar grasp reflex. In this reflex, babies will grasp anything that is placed on their palms, and newborn wraps their little fingers around one of our arms. This is a primitive and involuntary reflex. And the fourth one is what we call as curling reflex. In this reflex, infant curls their toes with the inner sole of the foot is shocked. In gripping or palmas grasp, the babies will grasp anything that is placed on their palms. Whereas in curling reflex, infants curl their toes. So, back to the fourth reflex. If there's a baby, you'll notice the baby's big toe flicks up and out. We are going to notice it from time to time, and until they reach about 1 to 2 years of age. So the fifth one is what we call as startle or moro reflex. This reflex, infants throw their arms out when they hear sudden sound. Startle or moro reflex usually occurs when a baby is startled by a loud sound or movement. In response to the sound, the baby throws back his or her head, extend out his or her arms and legs, cries, then pulls the arms and legs back in. This reflex develops between 28 and 32 weeks of gestation, and this occurs at 3 to 6 months of age. So, the sixth one is what we call as gallant reflex. This reflex, infants curve their bodies toward the side of the spinal cord which is shocked. So gallant reflex, or what we call as truncal incurvation reflex, is a newborn reflex named after neurologist Johann Sussman Gallant. It is elicited by holding the newborn in ventral suspension or face down, just like the picture, and stroking along one side of the spine. The normal reaction is for the newborn laterally flexed toward the stimulated side. So, the 7 is what we call as tunic neck reflex. It also known as the fencing position. This is demonstrated when baby's head is turned to one side. The arm on that side stretches out and the opposite arm bends at the elbow. So this reflex happens when a baby's head is turned to one side, just like I said a while ago. And this reflex lasts until the baby is about 5 to 7 months old. So since we're done talking about the different kind of reflex, let's move on to the basic sensory and perceptual process. Starting with the first one, newborns are able to smell and recognize their mother's odor. So they develop a sense of smell, and after that they also taste, preferring sweet substances and responding negatively to bitter and sour tastes. Then after they able to have the sense of taste, and they able to develop the sense of touch, which is respond to them as observed from their responses to painful stimuli. Then after that they able to develop a sense of hearing. They can hear, they are less sensitive to higher and lower pitch sounds than adults, and they can distinguish sounds and use sound to locate objects in space. So after they develop the sense of hearing, then they can able to develop the sense of seeing. But babies usually from 0 to 11 months have very poor vision, but when they become year older, they can see adults with normal vision. And the fourth one is what we call as the integrating sensory information, where infants begin to integrate information from different sense, example the sight and sound or the sight and touch. And infants are often attentive to informed sense presented redundantly to multiple senses. So again, I present you the basic sensory and perceptual process: the smell, taste and touch, hearing, seeing, integrating sensory information. So moving on is what we call the complex perceptual and attention processes. The first one is what we call as the perceiving object. In this, infants use motion, color, texture, and edges to distinguish object. And about 4 months, infants have begun to master size, brightness, shape, and color constancy, and infants perceive depth by means of retinal disparity and other cues such as texture gradient, relative size, and interposition. So after they're able to perceive object, the second one is what we call as attention, and it helps select information for further processing. Infants oriented to novel stimuli, but as it becomes more familiar, they habituate, meaning that they respond less. Compared to other children, preschoolers are less able to pay attention to tasks. Older children are able to pay attention because they have developed strategies for maintaining attention, whereas younger children's attention can be improved by getting rid of irrelevant stimuli. So next one is what we call the hand skills of infants and toddlers. So the first hand skills of infants and toddlers is what we call as self-feeding. 8 months, most babies can hold feeding bottles after the nipples have been placed in their mouths. At 9 months, they can put the bottle nipples in their mouths and take them out without help. At 12 months, they can drink from a cup and hold it both hands, and several months later, they can drink from the cup using only one hand. And aside from that, baby know how to hold spoons and learn to eat independently, just like the picture. And they able to develop life skills such as coordination and motor skill by grabbing, holding, and eventually using utensils and cup. So after they develop self-feeding, they know how to self-dressing. At the end of the first year, most babies can pull off their socks, shoes, caps, and mittens. By the middle of the second year, they will attempt to put up on caps and mittens. Infants and toddlers slowly learning how to dress themselves independently, and that is self-dressing. And the third one is what we call self-grooming. So in self-grooming, self-bathing is the first self-grooming they know, and after that they also know how to brush their hair or their teeth. In self-grooming skills, there are a set of skills that help especially infants and toddlers to maintain a proper personal appearance. So again, the 3 hand skills, starting with self-feeding, self-dressing, and the last one, self-grooming. So after that, let's talk about play skills of toddlers. How do toddlers play? Babies to learn to jump from an elevated position, usually movements resembling walking. They learn to climb stairs first by crawling and creeping. After they can walk alone, they go up 10 steps in an upright position, placing one footstep and then drawing the other foot up after it. Very few babies are able to learn to ride tricycles at this age or bicycles, and then only when they are held on the seat. They can learn by splashing with their arms and kicking their legs. So what is play? Play is considered a serious child's business. Hence, an educational program emphasize it that play is the ideal way to explore, understand, and master his environment, and it regarded as the essential tool for the child's expression, understanding, and integration. And psychologists thought that preschool years play is the leading source of development, and children learn and practice many basic social skills such as sense of self, learn to interact with other children, how to make friends, how to lie, and how to role play. So the classic study of how play develops in children was carried out by Mildred Parton. She closely observed children between the ages of 2 to 5 years and categorized their play into 6 types. So before we're gonna talk about the 6 types of play, you need to notice that the first 4 categories of play don't involve much interaction with others, while the last 2 do. And Parton noticed was that as they grew up, children participated less in the first 4 types and more in the last, which involve in greater interaction. So, and because of that, we're gonna talk about the types of play, starting with what we call as the unoccupied play. So unoccupied play develops in between 0 to 3 months. So the child is relatively stationary and appears to be performing random movements with no apparent purpose. So unoccupied play is when a child is just by themselves, moving their arms, legs, hands, and feet around creatively, getting to understand how it feels to move. So that is unoccupied play. Moving on is what we call the solitary play. The child is completely engrossed in playing and does not seem to notice other children. This is seen in 2 to 3 years of age. Solitary play describe a type of play when a children play alone and are not interested or unaware of other children nor interactive. So after that, the third play is the onlooker or spectator play. Actually, this type of play is one of the earliest stages of play, when children watches other play but they not interact and they just watch. The children just watch them. This type of play develops particularly at 2 years of age. So many children just ask questions to other children, but the main activity to this type of play is just the children just watch them play. So the fourth one is what we call as the parallel play. So the parallel play, the child mimics other children play but does not actively engage them. So the children also did not interact the other children. So parallel play happens when two or more toddlers play near or next to each other but not directly interacting to each other. They will sometimes observing and then again mimic each other. So that is what we call as parallel play. So the fifth one is what we call associative play. Associative play is the time when a child interact with another child. So the more interested in toys, and the very first category that involves here is the social interaction. And associative play is a fundamental stage of child's development when they begin learning simple social skills like talking to their peers about toys or whatever it is. So, and it usually happen between a child is in 3 to 4 years of age, and that is associative play. So, and the last one is what we call as cooperative play. So in this type of play, it requires an organization or a group of children playing together. So when a children plays with others and has interest in both the activity and other children involved in playing. So they talk, the children adopt rules and act as a group. So this type of play develops at 4 years old or older. So before I end this discussion, I just want to present you again the contents or the topics we discussed, and that about physical development of infants and toddlers, then the different infant reflexes, the basic sensory and perceptual processes, the hand skills of infants and toddlers, the play skills of toddlers, different types of play. So I guess that would be all. Thank you for listening. Again, I'm Cheryl Labario.
Physical development of preschoolers or early childhood. Preschool years is from the period to 3 to 5 years. It covers the years before the child enters formal schooling, and it is significant in the development of the child as this provides the foundation to later development. So when they were infants, they developed a trust of their caregivers. As toddlers, they began to establish some independence. So, significant facts about physical development at preschool years by Corpus 2018. First, we have significant changes in physical development are evident at this stage of development. So, in this stage, we can see the evidence clearly by seeing the physical development. Second is, physical development is marked by the acquisition of gross and motor skills. So some motor skills like walking, running, or riding a bike. Third is, children can already express themselves artistically, relating to art or artist. Fourth, children need to be provided with proper nutrition and right amount of sleep, because the healthy eating habits overall will encourage healthier sleeping patterns of the children. Next is support from caregivers is required to maximize their growth process. And lastly, in inclusive classrooms such as materials and activities should be made. Preschoolers can hop, jump over objects, catch and throw balls more precisely. As to their gross motor skills, children who are 3 to 4 years old can climb upstairs using a method of bringing both feet together on each step before proceeding to the next step. Also, at the age of this, children develop better upper body mobility. By the ages 4 to 5, children can go up and down the stairs alone in the adult fashion. In terms of their motor skills, by ages 2 to 3 years, children can create things with their hands. Around ages 3 to 4 years, children start to manipulate clothing fasteners like zippers and snaps and continue to gain independence in dressing and undressing themselves. And 3 to 4 years old continue to refine their eating skills, can cause utensils like forks and spoons. During ages 4 to 5 years, children continue to refine motor skills and build upon earlier skills. Next, we have the physical development of primary schoolers or middle childhood. These belong to the fourth stage, where it is for children who are 4 to 11 years old. This school comes after preschool and before secondary school. According to Corpus 2018, middle childhood is the stage when children begin their elementary school grades where their physical growth is slow and steady. Also, during this stage, they attain good muscles control, develop eye-hand coordination, acquire good personal hygiene, and develop awareness of good safety habits. An average increase in height of 2 inches will enable them to do different activities with greater accuracy. So, at this stage, children are able to, first, gain control over their major muscles. Second, have a good sense of balance. Third, enjoy doing real-life tasks. Fourth, less pretend and fantasize. Next is perform unimanual and bimanual. 6. Develop graphic activities. 7. Print names and copy simple designs, letters, and last, hold pencils, crayons, utensils correctly with supervision. Different motor skills. First, we have coordination. Coordination refers to series of movements organized and timed to occur in a particular way to bring about a particular result. It is required in complex movement. Second, we have balance. Balance is the ability to maintain equilibrium or stability of the body in different positions. And 2 types of balance is static balance and dynamic balance. Static balance is maintaining equilibrium in a fixed position like when standing in one foot. Second, dynamic balance, maintaining equilibrium while moving. Third, we have speed. This is ability to cover a great distance in the shortest possible time. And lastly, power, ability to perform a maximum effort in the shortest possible time. Next, we have the factors affecting physical development. First, we have obesity. This is prevalence of overweight children 5 to 10 years old has already increased from 5.8% in 2003 to 9.1% in 2013. Second, we have childhood nutrition. This adequate nutrition is vital for the continuous development of the various body parts. Third, we have sleep. Children at this age are required to go to bed earlier and take 9 to 11 hours of sleep since they do not have midday naps or siesta in school. Next, we have to understand this part, implications to education and parenting. This part is very helpful for the children. First, encourage children to join in summer activity or sport that interests them. Second, advocate for healthy schools food product. Third, provide a balance between rigorous and quiet classroom activities. Fifth, create an exercise plan for the children. Next, maintain a daily sleep schedule and bedtime routine. And lastly, make children's bedroom conducive for sound and peaceful sleep.
Good day everyone, I am Mark Silano and now I am tackle about our topic, the physical and motor characteristics during each stage of development. Physical development of intermediate schoolers or late childhood. According to Corpus in 2018, late childhood is the pertinent stage as discovered at ages 9 to 12 years of age. Physical changes during this stage are fairly unpredictable, steady, and gradual. Increased familiarity in schoolworks or other school tasks and activities enable them to enhance their motor skills. They have more control over their bodies and are becoming more active. They also have more liberty to choose the sports or hobbies they like. The next topic we have physical development of high school learners or adolescents. Adolescence is the period of transition between childhood and adulthood. Children who are entering adolescence are going through many changes like physical, intellectual, personality, and social development. Adolescence begins at puberty, which now occurs earlier on an average than in the past. The typical age range is from 12 to 18. Next topic, physical changes during adolescence. Puberty is the period of several years in which rapid physical growth and psychological changes occur, culminating in sexual maturity. The onset of puberty typically occurs at age 10 or 11 for females and age 11 or 12 for males. Females usually complete puberty by age 15 to 17. Males usually finish around 16 to 17. Females tend to attain reproductive maturity about 4 years after the first physical changes of puberty appear, while males accelerate more slowly but continue to grow for about 6 years after the first visible pubertal changes. Adolescent growth spurt is a rapid increase in an individual's height and weight during puberty, resulting from the simultaneous release of growth hormones, thyroid hormones, and androgens. So males experience growth spurt about 2 years later than females. Next topic, principles of learning motor skills. First principle is the principle of interest. It is a powerful motivational process that energizes learning, guides academic and career trajectories, and is essential to academic success. Next principle of practice, articulate how teachers can deliver the curriculum and engage students. So next principle is a principle of distributed practice, that is a gap between occurrences of an item retrieval. Make retrieval effortful, which benefits memory. Repeated practice also a context likely more variable due to the passage of time, and it is resulting in the encoding of different contextual information that is more effective for later retrieval. Next principle is principle of skill specificity. It implies to become better at a particular exercise or skill. One should perform that exercise or skill. Next principle is principle of whole part learning. It is a complexity of skill to be learned, and learner's ability to determine whether it is more efficient to teach the whole skill or break the skill into component parts. Next component is the principle of transfer. More and identical two tasks are that greater the possibility that positive transfer will occur. Practice conditions should match the conditions in which the motor skill is going to be used. The next principle is the principle of skill improvement. It is a practice in the motor skill correctly or essential or blurred for learning to take place in general or short periods of intense practice that will result in more learning than longer or mass practice sessions. Next principle is a principle of feedback. Feedback should be clearly stated, specific, and based on what is observed, both the action and the impact of non-evaluative. Next principle is the principle of variable practice. Block practice aids in performance, while variable practice aids in learning. Variable practice causes an increase in attention. Next is the three types of motor learning. There are block practice, variable practice, and random practice. First is block practice is typical of some drills in which a skill is repeated over and over, or minimal interruption by other activities. So this kind of practice seems to make sense in that it allows the learners to concentrate on one particular task at a time, and it's all refine and correct it. Next is the variable practice. Variable practice improves transfer, but only when the variations elicit synergies and indicate that during practice the parameter was held constant, improve during initial learning, transferred best to a task requiring modulation of that parameter. Next is the random practice. Random practice forces the learner to become more actively engaged in a learning process by preventing simple repetitions of actions. That's all about our topic.